All right, Helen, you can take it away when you are ready.
Great. Welcome everyone to another meeting of the Universal Health Plan Governance Board Executive Director Hiring Committee. My name is Helen Belanca. I'm the chair of the Universal Health Plan Governance Board. And let's get started with a roll call.
Thank you, Chair Belanca. We will start with Chair Belanca.
Here.
Judy Richardson.
Present.
Thank you. And then Bruce Goldberg, our third committee member, had a prior engagement, but we do have quorum and we can continue.
Great. Katie, is there any public comment?
There is not.
Okay, great. So for our agenda today, mostly we called this meeting to finish reviewing the applicants. We had the great good fortune of having 45 applicants to review, and we didn't get through all of them at our last meeting before we had to wrap up. So the purpose of this meeting is mostly to finish going through the applicants. We have Bruce's input on all of those and kind of agree on a ranking. And then we will make a decision at the end of the meeting of the final candidates who will be moving forward to interviews. Did I miss anything?
You did not. I just wanted to acknowledge that Tom Sinsick, I do see that you have your hand up, but just like any other traditional UHPGB committee or board meeting, you do have to sign up for public comment in advance. So I wouldn't be able to take you off mute to share your comment now, but please feel free to email the inbox and I will make sure to get your question or comment to the committee ASAP. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, great. Courtney, did you have any other grounding information before we move on to the candidates?
Nope, none since we met last Tuesday.
Okay, great. So at this point, the Executive Director Hiring Committee will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660, Section 2A and F, which allows the committee to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or an individual agent, and consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience will be placed in a Zoom waiting room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to an open session and welcome the audience back into the room. We anticipate that will be about 4:50, but we will then be likely adjourning the meeting and it's not clear if there will be any discussion at that point.
Great.
I didn't have the time, so I'll say it's now 4:03 when we're entering executive session.
Wonderful. And then we'll be back at 4:50. So around 4:50. I will go ahead and stop the recording now, and I will put members of the public in a waiting room. So I'll give you one moment, or I'll let you know when we can get started.
Great. Are we back, Katie?
Yes, we are back, and we have members of the public back in the room with us.
Great. Welcome back, everyone. We wrapped up that section earlier than we thought. I hope you're all able to join us. We are back in public session. It's now 4:38. So we've had a chance to review all the candidates, and I wonder if there's a motion about next steps.
Yes, Chair Belanca. I move the 3 candidates ranked highly qualified and the 3 candidates ranked substantially qualified on to the next level, which will be interview process.
And I will second that motion. And now we do a roll call vote.
Wonderful. Helen Belanca.
Yes.
Judy Richardson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. So at this point, we had a few process questions for Jake regarding how to conduct the interviews. We've been notified that the date that we were planning to do the interviews, our staff, our interim executive director and our executive assistant will not be available because they will be attending to other committee meetings. And so we're hoping that Jake, you would go over, your recommendations for who should be present at these interviews, both who should be on the interview panel and then the importance of whether or not staff should be present for those.
So if a quorum of the committee will be participating in the interviews, then it should be conducted in executive session as part of the public meeting. If fewer than a quorum, which would in this case would be one, a single committee member. If a single committee member will be doing the interview, then that does not need to be done in connection in a public meeting. As far as staff, the reason to include staff would be primarily for technical reasons. And then as far as who else might need to be there, the only other requirements you want to look at is, because the board is within DCBS, look at DCBS standards to the extent that they bear on that issue. If there are standard interviewing protocols, we'd want to take those into account.
Courtney, do you want to weigh in on standard protocols?
I don't see, or I should say, standard protocols it's determined by the hiring manager, in this case, the hiring committee, who would serve on that panel. I would be more than happy to be there as a facilitator and just for the documentation purposes on the HR side of things. So I would be there in attendance only to facilitate, but not serving directly as a panel member. I consistently do this with a lot of our other executive recruitments, but I see no need to have any DCBS staff on the panel serving as an interview panel member unless you would like them to.
And obviously, Sean O'Day was very involved in the hiring of the last executive director, and he's offered us some great insights. I think if we did include somebody, it would be him. So certainly the three of us on the hiring committee and possibly Sean as a panel.
Thursday, February 13th.
Judy, do you have thoughts on that?
I agree. I think that's fine. Jennifer has her hand up. Jenny.
I just wanted to note that DCBS leadership is going to be in the Ways and Means Committee doing the budget presentation on Monday and Tuesday next week. So I don't know what Sean's availability will be.
Yeah, it seems like Tuesday is not a great day for anybody. Jenny, I would love for you to be there, and I feel like nothing will happen without Katie there. So
Agreed.
So I'm thinking the 18th is probably not going to work anyway. But if we tried to find a date when both Jenny and Katie could attend, I would love to have your ears on the process and logistical help. And then certainly Courtney being present for help with logistics and also just a great HR presence, and then have the three of us. That's a big group though. That's kind of intimidating for our interviewees. That would be 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7 people in the room. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Courtney? Like too many people or they wouldn't be on screen necessarily. Like, these are all virtual interviews, or are we planning? I didn't even ask if these are going to be virtual.
Well, that would also be your decision of whether or not you would like these virtual or in person. And then I would just say, as an executive director, hopefully they wouldn't find 7 people too intimidating, just because of the nature of the work, and they will most likely be in front of many people in the room and having to present and speak. So I would say that 7 shouldn't be too intimidating. We do a lot of executive recruitments and have at many times up to, I think 9 is the largest I've had serve on a panel.
Yeah, and those all wouldn't be on the panel. I think the panel, I'm up for input on this, but in my opinion, the panel would be the 3 of us on the committee, and Sean would be my suggestion, but then having having you there, Courtney, and having Jenny and Katie listen in would be great. Unless Jenny, you want to be on the panel, maybe there would be 5 of us on the panel.
I'd be willing to be on the panel if you want me there. Yeah. But I'd like to be, I don't know what it would mean to be in the room, but not part of the panel. I don't know what that would mean. Courtney, if there's any like prohibition on having someone just like kind of sit in. Katie would obviously be there for technical reasons.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, if they are virtual, and I would love to have Katie in the room just for those technical purposes. If they're in person, you might be able to excuse Katie from the interviews and then still have you, Jenny, serve as a panel member, an official panel member. So that way you have somebody on the DCBS staff side to serve on that, plus Sean O'Day.
So do you also, Judy and Helen, do you have feelings about whether or not you'd like to try to have them in person, or if you would be okay having virtual interviews for the first round?
I'm inclined to prefer virtual just because I wonder about the availability of these
Yeah.
folks too. And if we ask them to take, you know, a half day to come, I mean, I think that virtually we're going to have a better chance of getting them all interviewed and then be able to discuss like all at once rather than trying to coordinate and organize them all in one place.
My preference is always for in person, but just for the sheer logistics of it and trying to get it moving, I think it makes sense to do this first round virtually. I would stipulate that if we decide on a second round interview, if we narrow it to 2 candidates, that those would be in person at a board meeting, I think is what the board decided. So
Agree.
yeah. Okay, well, let's see if we can make that work. And so let's try our best to have the panel be the 3 members of the hiring committee, Sean O'Day and Jenny Donovan as our interim ED. And then have Courtney and Katie there for support, and try to have as many of these as possible on a day as soon as possible after the 18th, but not the 18th, right? So we're looking at later that week or into the next week, to find a time when that we could all make that happen. Does that seem feasible?
I would say you would want to hold about 6 hours with 6 candidates moving forward. That will be about a 6-hour time frame, and giving breaks in between. And then I can even reach out to Amy Helgeman, who is Sean O'Day's executive assistant, and see when his availability is and start confirming an interview date.
And I'm wondering if it makes more sense to break it into 2-3 hour, just for people's time. Like I don't know if he'd be able to commit that much of his day to this. And if he's not, you know, we could consider 2-3 hour sessions, maybe on 2 consecutive days or something, to break it up that way, if that works.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just throwing this out there as just a potential option, brainstorming idea. Is there any possibility of doing 1 or maybe 2 interviews after the board meeting on Thursday, the 20th? Or would that be just too much in one day?
I'm okay with that. Thursday the 20th. Yes, because we wrap up by noon. That would work for me.
I can do that.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's a start.
I wouldn't want to go more than, if we did that, like we could potentially do 2 or 3 interviews after the board meeting. I don't know, but much longer than. Are you thinking just 1, Katie, or you're thinking?
I would think 2 at the max. Like if we did maybe two on Thursday the 20th, and then we did the rest on Tuesday the 25th.
Okay, that would work. Actually, that would be really nice. Yeah, to do 2 and then 4 on a different day. Yeah, that actually is a good idea.
I think that's really smart too, because once we invite people to interview, they may have a conflict on one day or the other, right?
Yeah, right. It gives people 2 options to do it.
if we did that on Thursday with 2 interviews, would you want to wait until you both get home and are settled, so later on in the afternoon, or would you want to do it on site together, or all 3 of you together?
I'd
The
do it on-
person would be virtual, but
I would say on site together, don't you think?
Yeah.
or maybe there's some local Salem folks. I shouldn't say I don't know their locations, but maybe if there's anyone local, we could invite them for in person.
No, I think they should all be virtual or all be in person
Okay.
for equity, Katie.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would recommend choosing one and platform to conduct interviews on. And then just so both of you are aware of the process, I send a notification in Workday to candidates moving forward. So that is sent all at the same time, and we do a first come, first serve basis. And so the candidates, I get timed emails of who chooses what time slot and then work through there. If there is conflict, I'll usually communicate with candidates on that, but I do like to send, again, for that equity purpose, the same email at the exact same time to all candidates.
Okay.
Sorry, just to throw a wrench in it. Tuesday the 25th is another big meeting day because we've got you guys have the RFP tabulation meeting. There's a leadership meeting, operations committee planning meeting. So what other days in the week are both, like, if we looked at Monday the 24th, maybe in the afternoon? I don't know what Mondays look like for you both or for Bruce.
Yeah, Monday could work for me.
Because Monday looks great from DCB or UHPGB perspective. Past 1 is wide open.
Judy, would you be able to do that?
Yeah, I can make that work.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful.
And then the other, we should maybe give you a few options. What about Thursday, the 27th?
That's a good day for me.
In the morning, we do have an operations committee meeting from 1 to 4, but we could do some morning interviews.
Yeah.
Great. I think between those 3 days, we can make it work.
Okay. Excellent. Great. Any other business that we need to think about in terms of logistics, next steps?
I do have one question, and that is communication to the candidates so they can know what's to be expected during this process. And so I am seeking some advice, Jake, on advising how I would communicate to candidates what they can expect in their interview.
First, I think the first thing to do is to set expectations about what the results could be, and that is these interviews aren't to make a final decision. These interviews are to narrow down to a set of finalists for final interviews, and then to explain to them what the format will be, that it will be remote and there will be multiple interviewers, and to the extent that we know who those people will be, share that information with them. Ideally share that information with them at some point before the interviews.
And the board decided that once we narrow down from this group to the finalists, that the board would like in-person interviews with the whole board, likely at the March meeting. So that would be the next step if they were to advance beyond this stage.
Great.
Does that there was mention in the board meeting in January that potentially we would hold like a special session if needed for these interviews or to continue
right.
thinking about it. It was just a fleeting idea that someone brought up.
Right.
But I don't know if that's if we want to consider that or if we just want to.
That's true. Yeah. So maybe not saying that would be at the March board meeting, but it would be the second phase interviews with the finalists would be with the entire board. Yeah, shortly, whether that's at our March meeting or before that in a special meeting. Yeah, that's a good point.
The only other question I have for both of you is for candidates who are not selected to move forward in the interview, would you like me to notify those candidates they are no longer in consideration?
I would, yeah, I think that's a nice courtesy to just say, we've made some, decisions and yes, I think that's always nice to hear something back.
Okay.
And then we decided at our last committee meeting that at the time you notify them, you will also give them the interview questions and direct them to our website, which is full of, many public documents about our work. Is that right?
Yes, I will. I have a template that I use to notify candidates. You're moving forward. Here are the interview questions, and here are some resources that are available to you before your interview, should you want to use them in preparation.
Great.
It will be a little unusual, perhaps, just that this will be tied with public meetings. So perhaps maybe a little explanation of why that is would be appropriate to help them understand that it has nothing to do with them. It is simply a function of the structure and nature of the board, and then the committee and the public meetings law. And I can help put together that language if you'd like.
Thank you. Do we need to, for the interviews, go in and out of executive session back to public session between the interviews? Or would we invite the next candidate into the executive session? I'm not sure how that would work.
There wouldn't be any need to go in and out unless a decision were going to be made.
Okay.
Between the interviews, and my understanding is that wouldn't be the case.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, while we have a couple minutes, can we, I just want to make sure I totally understand. So with each of these interviews from a public meetings perspective, we do have to announce them like normal, start in open session, and then go into executive session, and then come back and end the meeting, essentially.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions, remaining issues?
I would just like to add for the public who may be listening that to thank everyone who applied, and we got some phenomenal set of candidates. I'm really humbled by all these great people who want to work to improve healthcare in Oregon, and I think I appreciate their time and their thoughtfulness in applying.
Yeah, I agree. It was really remarkable to go through all of the CVs and letters and just to see the breadth of knowledge and experience and enthusiasm out there. So yeah, I echo Judy's gratitude. Thank you all to everyone who applied and everyone who encouraged their friends and colleagues to apply. I know a lot of that was happening, and it's really great. It's really appreciated. And I feel confident we're going to have a great executive director at the end of this process. So yeah, thank you to all of you. And I want to thank Courtney again and her staff, and of course, Katie and Jenny. There's so much work that goes on behind the scenes to prepare all of this work, and really grateful. The board expresses its gratitude to all of you. And of course to Jake. Jake, it's really great to have you and have your advice. So thank you for being here and being present and helping us with this process. And with that, I think we can adjourn. Unless anyone has any final comments. Great, we are adjourned.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you all.